Before Dracula, before Twilight, before the Cape and the Fangs, there was a doctor. Not a monster hunter, but the man who created the monster, the vampire. His name was John Pilidori. He was Byron's doctor. He was a poet, a dreamer, and a man who accidentally gave the world their first true vampire. So we're going to be actually going through the stories of the cultural symbolism of vampires from the beginning of documented and recorded time. We're going to go through the lore, what inspired vampires, what inspired the vampires in pop culture today. This is not just a story about blood and immortality. It's the cost of wanting to be remembered and how sometimes the people who bring legends to life are the ones they consume first. I'm Becca, and this is Chadderbox, where strange, sacred, and sarcastic all meet our little dark corner of the internet.
I'm Kyla, and don't be afraid to jump inside that box.
You might still be scared from last week's episode, and unfortunately, this episode is just as scary. Actually, it's a different kind of scarier.
It's still like darker, but not as gory.
I'm not ready to let go of Halloween yet, so this is going to be my last
me.
Oh, we're doing another spooky one next week?
No, I said it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
It's done because I already have one on the wheel of fortune.
Yes.
And then you put ding.
So, all right, chatters, it's time to go inside the box. Vampires appear everywhere because they express something universal, and that is the fear of death and decay, the anxiety about boundaries between life and death, human and animal, sacred and profane. We're trying out a new little area today, so if you notice things look a little different, it's because they do. We're playing musical chairs, trying to figure out. And then last week you saw us in my studio, my office. So now we are back in Kyla's.
Yeah, we're back in our studio shed.
When it comes to vampires, vampires also have a desire for eternal life or energy that they're known for. There's also the warning against taking more than what you need. All of this ties in to the cultural symbolism of vampires. Every culture retells the same truth in its own language, saying that when we feed on the vitality of others, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, we lose our own humanity, which is incredible. So let's travel through time, starting from the cradle of civilization, moving towards the shadowed castles of Europe. This is one of my favorite ways to explore mythology, not just with European folklore, but to explore the global archetype of how vampires have manifested through every continent for centuries, for millennia, before the word vampire even existed. So we're going to go continent by continent through a little timeline and talk about the vampire-like beings, their origins, traits, symbolism, and you'll notice that across the world, the same theme repeats, and that is something feeds on the life force of the living, whether it's blood, energy, spirit, or breath, and it walks between life and death. So this is very interesting. I'm so excited to get into this. In West Africa, the Ashanti people in Ghana. The earliest references are from oral traditions that predate European contact, which was recorded first in the 18th century. The Ogwefu is a witch-like being who can leave its body at night as a glowing light to drain life energy, often blood, from children. The symbolism is fear, envy, hidden malice, and spiritual corruption in the community. This parallels to the psychic vampire archetypes, being able to hear your thoughts and your internal fears, and then use that to manipulate. I cannot speak today. Manipulate you. Then we also have I'm probably not saying that right, but I really tried to look into all of the pronunciation. So if I do not pronounce something right, please. It's Asenbosom. I'm pretty sure that is how you say it. It is also known in Ghana, Togo, and the Ivory Coast. Earliest recorded is in the 19th century by the Ashanti people in their oral traditions. The lore is that it was a tree-dwelling humanoid creature with iron teeth and hook-like feet, and it would hang upside down from the trees, and it would attack travelers and suck their blood. So the symbolism is they would tell you to watch out for the Asenbosom when you were wandering between villages at night. So basically, it was used as a control tactic for fear for people not to stray too far from the community at night, which is very interesting because it's just kind of crazy to think how horror stories or people telling scary stories, it doesn't just span from our childhood. It's this has been going on, people telling stories to scare people, to scare children, don't leave the house at night.
Just it was a way to keep them from, I guess, being bad. It's kind of like the Santa stuff. And if you don't want to be good, then you won't get presents. So it's the same type of concept. Maybe parents have been doing it to prevent children from going out and doing things they're allowed. Because you can't stop a child. The best way to stop them is to scare them, I guess.
It's really fucking random and funny, but when I was a kid, my parents did not let us believe in Santa Claus, but my grandparents did. My mom's dad did. He would tell us, he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. I remember I was 5 or 6 years old, and I was like, does he see me when I'm naked? No, he doesn't.
See, whenever you're being bad. Well, what if I'm bad in the shower?
Because I'm does he see I'm naked? Kids
Never.
some stupid shit.
When I told my mom, he isn't real. I know he's not. I already knew it. She knew that I knew. And she's like, well, if you don't fucking believe, then you're not getting shit. And I'm like, Santa's real. Well, I was like, Santa's real. Santa is real. I'll believe it. I'll be a kid. It's your bunny and the fairy.
My son did not really care for Santa when we took him last year, but
young. I feel like a lot of babies do that.
Some babies freak out when they see Santa, so
you gotta wait till they're older.
Well, as a toddler, I'm very curious as to how he's going to respond. If he's going to cry or if she's he was such a good baby, and now he's a fucking terrifying toddler. Bro is not scared of anything. This is the last of the African vampires that we're going to cover. Well, I do have a few stories from each culture, but right now we're just kind of talking about the general. We have the Impindulu, known as the lightning bird from southern Africa. Also known as the Zula, the Pandu.
Sounds like a crow.
You really did. And the Zosa. So the lore is it is a vampiric bird that feeds on blood, serves the witches. There's a lot of witch doctors in Africa. There's a lot of witch doctors.
It's so prevalent.
It is still, yes. They practice different forms of dark magic or witchcraft. And basically, it's saying that this vampiric bird, something that maybe resembles the bat. I don't think it does, though. I think it's just a scary looking bird.
It's every continent's own version of that myth. Or the one I was talking about last time, the Bigfoot.
Yeah,
The Australian Bigfoot. Yowie. And then we have Bigfoot and other names for it. Sasquatch. There's other terms for it in other places.
These fears manifest across every continent. And when it comes to the symbolism of this vampire bird, it's associated when storms roll in and with a woman with bad sexual energy. A woman who is a Jezebel. A woman who sleeps around a lot.
That's what bad sexual energy is.
According to this culture, it's known as not specifically a prostitute, but a woman who is known to be promiscuous.
Back when they didn't have such words.
So, like, when a storm's rolling in or when you see a really hot girl who's hitting on you. Just kidding. But that's the symbolism behind it.
It's a jazzy.
And the symbolism is nature's power and destructive beauty. It's almost like the storm rolling in is a metaphor for something wanting to kill your desires. It's strange, but that is the folklore behind it. Then we have Asia. In India, there was the Vitala. The Vitala is actually tales as early as to the first millennium BCE. So the lore is that the spirits would inhabit corpses and then at night would animate them. They would come out from the grave. So this is more of like a zombie vampire. The symbolism behind it is it was incomplete karma. You had attachment to the material realm in your material body, and you did not have a proper burial. If you were just kind of like buried without any like sort of like flowers or like headstone or not that they always had headstones, but they would typically mark the graves. So if you were in an unmarked grave and something looked a little unearthed, they would, at certain points in history, take a stake and drive it through the heart to make sure the body wouldn't reanimate at night. In China, we have the Jiangxi, known as the hopping vampire. This vampire has been depicted in Demon Slayer, if you have watched Demon Slayer. It is basically a demon that it like jumps really high off buildings and attacks people to take their life force. And this is what it's based off of. So in the Qing dynasty in the 17th century CE, although there are some manuscripts that say that this is actually further back from the 17th century, but in the 17th century was when it was most documented. The lore is that it would reanimate a corpse that drains the life force from people instead of their blood. It moves swiftly, often hopping, jumping off of tall things, especially in the dark. The symbolism is the disruption of cosmic imbalance and improper death and burial. This modern echo is actually popular in Hong Kong horror cinema in the 1980s and 90s. So apparently they had a lot of movies based off of the Jiangxi. Then we have the Pengalan in southern Asia. This is in Malaysia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. In the 16th and 17th century, local oral traditions are actually older than this. But this is when it was first documented. The lore is, and so the Penanggalan, or the Meninggal, is basically a woman who detaches her head with the spine and organs dangling, flying by night and feeding on the blood of infants and pregnant women. Now that is just fucking horrifying. Whoever came up with that.
Yeah.
The symbolism when the female power turns monstrous. And these stories developed through the anxiety about childbirth, menstruation, and sexuality. So it basically was scaring women into not being pregnant. This was in Southeast Asia, such as Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. I don't know why.
It's like trying to have the child thing, but this was a long time ago. So why were you not wanting to have kids?
Maybe it's also because there were a lot of diseases during this time. We're actually going to get into a few stories from several vampire stories are actually inspired by the bubonic plague. So that's where like the European vampires come from. Some of them anyways. So like the bubonic plague turns all of your lymph nodes black, and then the black starts making these big balls and your skin starts turning gray. Once your lymph nodes all go black is when the death is setting in. And the thing about the bubonic plague, it starts out like a regular cold. You have fevers, chills, coughs, like just like normal shit. And then your lymph nodes here will turn black. And it moves all the way down your body.
I heard that there's some shit going around with the bubonic plague out here.
Here, right now?
Like one case. They're
Too much.
I saw this a couple months ago. I swear to God.
Dude, I was researching about the bubonic plague, and when I saw pictures of like modern people who have had the bubonic plague, I was like, that looks fucking terrifying.
August 2025, the plague, aka the Black Death, made a reappearance in California last week after it infected a South Lake Tahoe resident.
Oh my God.
I saw that.
Oh God, that's terrifying. The bubonic plague. That's crazy.
Yes, there are still cases of the bubonic plague, though it is rare and treatable with antibiotics. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates about 7 human cases occur annually in the U.S., with most cases found in the rural areas of the western U.S. and other regions worldwide, like Africa and Asia.
See the images. What does it show? It's got like the witch doctor. That's crazy. I don't know. That's terrifying.
Bubonic plague on Skid Row. Dude, someone that has it on Skid Row? How's that even possible? Skid Row, the fucking homeless place.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking that's fucking prison. No, Skid Row is where it's in California. That's where that guy interviews people, the Subway underbelly.
I love him.
He goes to a lot of people on Skid Row. I'm pretty positive. That's where it's like the homeless people are really bad.
I knew that he was out there, but I did not know that. That's crazy.
Bro, yeah, I watched a lot of his videos.
It's terrible.
These look like old pictures too.
When you look up bubonic plague from the olden times,
I just thought 2025.
Dude, like bubonic plague images, like when you look at what they did historically, how they did the art about it, it's crazy. Yeah, see, that was one of the ones I saw. Oh my. It's horrifying. I'm not going to put a picture here, so
just know that it is around, but it's treatable with antibiotics. You could not die if you go get help. It says in the rural western, so that's over California, all over that way. Why is it prevalent over that way though? Why do you think? I mean, just like your guess. I mean, not that we know really, but why do you think?
I don't know. Maybe it's just because not like a very clean state. I would not say that California is
western. So that's making me think like Arizona.
Well, there is a lot of people who fly in from other countries, such as Ukraine.
There's other international airports that people do too, like New York. Very big airport.
Not just airports, but I'm talking about like people who actually move to live there. Like a lot of people, when they're trying to make it big, they move to California. They might be a carrier of it, but they might not know. So then they pass it on to somebody.
A lot of people want to move to New York though.
That too, but
it doesn't make sense to me. It's just like,
I don't know. It's just a thought.
Is it because it's a drier part? Like you see here, so Africa's dry. You know what I mean?
Do you want to ask the chat?
No. I don't want to ask him. Love you.
The bubonic plague comes from infected fleas from bacterium from rodents. This can come from prairie dogs, squirrels, chipmunks, and mice. In the western U.S., these animals are a big part of the population. When these rodents get infected and the fleas jump onto other hosts, pets, or human, it gives it the opportunity. So, yeah.
So it's from fleas?
Yes, infected fleas from rodents.
So they can't, like, bite you and give it to you. I'm talking about the rodent itself.
No.
Because Trapper got bit by one of them chipmunk out there when we went to Yellowstone.
Oh, my gosh.
When he was... I didn't really, like, bite him, but it was funny because he was giving it a little peanut and it jumped in the air and went at him. It was funny.
Oh, my God.
But, oh my God, you might have to bubonic plague. Thank God it's only from a flea jumping on you. Damn, you'd have to be really out deep camping to get a flea and get infected and bit from it. But at least you know it's treatable otherwise.
I mean, you've got rats out in California, big rats. They said there's rats just like in New York, like the size of little dogs.
Never seen the big rats.
I did. I saw them out in Maryland, in Washington, D.C. In the subway area. I was like, what the fuck are these fucking mutant rats? That's crazy. I used to
it's like that's where they got the Ninja Turtles rats.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. They're a rat. I used to date somebody out in Maryland. If you hear tippy tappies, it's just Olive. So the last of the Asian cultural vampires, we have the Pontianak. The Pontianak. I'm trying so hard. So don't roast me in the comments. Actually, roast me in the comments if you really think I need. This is from the Indonesian folklore. The lore is the spirit of a woman who died in childbirth, who rises from the grave to drink men's blood and take their life force. In modern pop culture, this continues to be a major ghost in the Indonesian cinema. Because I want to get to the stories. We have the European vampires. This is where they were really inspired from when it comes to how they look, how they act. They're really mysterious. It's the Upir. It's known. It's known in.
Actually, I've heard that word.
Upir. It's known in Slavic and Balkan regions. Actually, I am Balkan, so that is where my maiden last name comes from.
A vampire.
What? Honestly, that's probably why I'm so fucking pale. I'm a vampire.
What's your hair?
I have red hair.
That type of pale, but you're just like a little more.
I didn't know that Balkans are basically like, I mean, yes, they're like Slavic, but they also are like Ukrainian and Romanian and things like that.
They're a little more pink. So it's like my friend Kiana, she's like mixed. And then she had me in her line one day and I look pink compared to her. So if we were to be in a line looking at people's
Skin tone.
yeah, the tone. Like if you it's more like oranges, like if that makes sense, because I'm more of like some people have the olive. I'm more orange.
I'm more peachy.
So you know what I mean?
It's interesting. But if I was next to her, I'd look more pink. I wish I had olive skin. My sister was blessed with olive skin.
I don't have olive skin. Mine gets golden, like orangey.
I was looking this up and I was like, how can I naturally tan myself in the winter but not using any heat source?
Big tan?
No. Eating carrots. If you incorporate carrots into your diet throughout the winter, and I'm not just talking about for every single meal, but maybe just once a day, eating carrots can actually, like that, it's something, something. It's a scientific word, and it basically puts orange pigment into your skin if you eat carrots regularly. I don't like to use tanning beds because my mom had skin cancer a few years ago. And because my mom has very pale skin like me, I don't want to risk getting skin cancer. So I want to find the natural way to get more color. But anyways, the Upir from the Balkan regions is earliest written record. It was actually in the Russian chronicles, the newspapers, basically, from the 11th century. The Upir. Folklore peaks, though, in 17th and 18th centuries from the vampire panics. The traits are bloated corpses, ruddy with blood, especially blood coming from the mouth. And they say that when they would see like a little like unearthed dirt, when they're just around the graves, they would unearth the part by the face. And if they saw blood coming out, then they would say, this corpse is rising from the grave and feeding on the blood of our community. Basically, they would stab the corpse through the heart or cut its head off. Because they said that like that. And that has translated over to how people think of vampires now, because that's the only way to kill a vampire is to stake it through the heart or to cut off their heads or to expose them to sunlight.
Where them come in where they sleep in coffins.
Yeah, or being exposed to sunlight. That is a new one. The symbolism comes from death and disease, improper burial, fear of the restless undead, especially from the bubonic plague. We have the Strigoi. This is from Romania. This is the Romanian beliefs of returning spirits. The Strigoi would drain the vitality through sometimes invisible means and shape-shifting into animals. So an animal would shape-shift into a person that would take your life force.
A bat.
This is actually the direct ancestor of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Then we have the German Nachttier in the 17th, 18th century, a corpse that would choose a burial shroud, causing all of the relatives to get sick and die. Basically, the symbolism is the fear of the plague and the guilt from the survivors. In North America, we have the Wendigo from the Algonquin peoples in the Great Lakes in Canada. This is an oral tradition that is thousands of years old. up to 2 or 3,000 years old, maybe even older. The Wendigo is a cannibalistic spirit of the winter, greedy spirit, once human, transformed through cannibalism and consuming flesh. It is the symbolism of consumption, of imbalance, the vampiric hunger that becomes moral corruption. Because sometimes when things would get so bad during the winter and all of the animals were hunted off, the last thing that they could do was to eat. The Algonquin people are not known for eating people. I'm saying that it wasn't that far off and that it did happen on occasion. This is one of my favorite stories. I've known about this since I was a child because when I grew up in Chicago, we lived next to a lot of Mexicans, and they would always, they had chupacabra art inside. They would like tell me stories about it. I loved learning about this one.
Chupacabra.
The chupacabra first reports to 1995 in Puerto Rico. It's a creature that drains the blood from livestock, known as the goat sucker. But the symbolism goes to the anxieties of colonialism, media sensations. There was a lot of kids shows. Scooby-Doo had an episode about this.
I remember it.
I vaguely remember.
Oh, I remember it. I remember the little back area. It was like during Halloween or some shit.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this. One of my neighbors I know 100%, she had like an altar in her. So it was like a table when you first walk in. And there were all of these pictures of family members, and there were Roman candles. And then there was literally a picture also of the chupacabra. And I'm looking at all the pictures of family, and then I see this scary monster. I'm like, who's that? And she goes, it's not who's that, it is what is that? She said, it is the monster, the chupacabra. And she would scare me and tell me stories about it. I loved scary stories as a child, which is why I love horror movies as an adult. Then we have the New England Vampire Panic in 19th century Rhode Island and Connecticut. This is a real historical event. In the 1800s, there were outbreaks of tuberculosis, and people blamed them on vampires. This was actually put in like newspapers. The example I have is Mercy Brown in 1892 was exhumed and had her heart burned at a stake. The symbolism is society reverting to folklore during a national crisis.
Yeah, blame something. They needed a reason.
Just like what if COVID, they like blamed COVID on people having sex with bats? So how does this correlate to COVID?
What about contacts in it? I just don't like the clear. I didn't clean over. I need to actually use soap. I didn't use soap.
Yeah, I always use soap with my.
I usually do. I'm trying to rush. I just used water.
All right, so we have a few more left. In the Andes Mountains in Peru and Bolivia, it is actually known as a white person. A white stranger.
That's probably what we get called when we go over there.
Tapistaco.
Oh my god, now I wish I remember that. Like, anyone called me that?
Now you know what they're talking about.
You're getting your ass whooped.
It is known as a white stranger who kills and drains the blood or wealth from people through magic. The origins date back to the colonial era. I was up until 2:30 last night doing the laundry. I wasn't even drinking last night. Eric was out at a bachelor party last night.
For who?
Somebody from work. They went to Twin Peaks, then they went bar hopping, then they went to
Twin Peaks. That's such a weird guy thing to do. Like, so like movie-esque.
I know, right? That's what the guy wanted. It's like, let's go to Harvard. He wanted to go there to get before they went out, but he was like, I don't want to get food at the strip club because it's like so expensive. So he was like, I'd rather just go to Twin Peaks.
They went to a strip club.
They did go to a strip club, but they were leaving by midnight. And he was like, I still want to hang out. He was like, no, man, I'm tired. They were out from 7 until about midnight. And he's like, I want to get home. I feel sick or whatever. So
that's what that guy said.
He was like, I want to get home. I feel sick. Then his friends were like, damn, somebody's hoarding.
And it's like, after all those naked ass things, now I want to F my wife or Charlotte's wife. Personally, I would not let Trevor to do that for his.
What, to go to
the strip club? No.
Brat, I was like, so actually the guy
He would let him, but I would not feel comfortable. I would feel like some type of way about it.
called the guys were giving him shit and they were like, oh, you might want to ask your wife and double check if she's okay with you going to a strip club. And he goes, you don't know my wife? And he's like, what do you mean? And he goes, she would want to go. And I was,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I was okay with him going without me. I was like, to be honest, I was like, get a fucking tampon.
Like married wise, like about to get married, that's what he chooses to do for his bachelor trip. I'd be like, really? Like, because he's not, I don't see him as that type of guy. I have my reasons, but we're not going to say that. No, I wouldn't like that. Girl would. I literally went to a strip club before with one of my boyfriends. Couldn't get in and let him go in, and I regretted it instantly. I was sitting out the damn car by myself. I didn't have my ID, and I thought I could use my birth certificate.
Oh my God.
It was my first time going though.
Yeah. I love the
But
strip
no,
club.
none of my friends went. They all went inside without me because I was like, oh, it's fine. But really, at the end of it, I realized I want to be out there by myself waiting on everybody to enjoy themselves. And they didn't care. They were all about it, and they all left me outside.
Oh, that's sad. I wouldn't have left you.
And then that actually wasn't the reason I met, but that isn't the reason, I guess, too. So don't be going to no strip club without me. Because don't fucking lie to me, bitch.
Me and my man went to a strip club in the Everglades a few months ago, and we got a lap dance by a Puerto Rican girl, the both of us. It was really hot. It was
For you.
It was really hot.
Good for you.
I love a strip club, girl.
Stripper.
No, seriously.
I'd rather be the stripper
No.
than someone else do it for him because I know I could do it. I don't need one.
This is my last tangent. So before we go back to this, Eric was asking me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said, you know, I really want to do pole dancing classes. Like, I really want to do it.
That's what you said.
And he said it's $80 for 4 classes for 1 month. And as a part of my Christmas present, he's going to get me that. So I'm going to do pole dancing.
I remember you telling me about that.
I'm so excited. Oh, Dad. Yeah. Once I'm a little confident, I'm probably going to ask if I can take a video, show my skills on TikTok. Oops.
Sorry, it doesn't have to be sex.
And it's a workout. It's a fucking workout. It's so much upper body strength, lower core strength. It's amazing. I can't wait to do it. Very quickly, we're going to run through these because I want to get to the stories. And we have the Chan Chan from Chile and Argentina. It is not Chile. It is Chile. The Chan Chan is known as a sorcerer's severed head that flies at night and sucks the blood. It has wings that are formed out of the ears. This dates back to pre-Columbian shamanic fears blended with Roman Catholic demonology. Apparently there are demons that are just heads in the Roman Catholic demon book. The last of the South American, we have the Tunda, the Colombian and Ecuadorian vampire, known as a forest spirit that lures victims, especially children who are alone, to suck their blood and take them up into the trees. Just imagining that is so scary.
It's like a leopard.
Yeah. We have the last continent, Oceania. Right, this comes from Australia, the Aboriginal Australia, the Yaramayaku. The lore is a small red man who drops from fig trees, sucks blood through the fingers, and then eventually swallows and regurgitates their victims. That is disgusting. The earliest accounts of this are Aboriginal myths and oral traditions predating to before Australia was even colonized. The symbolism is that it is a trickster, a lesson on people who don't respect nature or don't respect their elders, that they will be transformed through death and the rebirth cycle. Then we have the Adse from Papua New Guinea and Fiji, a spirit that can take the form of a firefly, enter a person, drain their blood, especially unsuspecting children. This actually is very similar to the African shape-shifting spirits and energy parasites. And Antarctica, there's no native lore on the vampires, although The Thing in 1982 uses vampiric themes through isolation, infection, consumption of the victim through parasitic transformation. So the Thing was inspired by it, but it's not really a vampire, it's more of an alien. So the earliest evidence of vampires date back to 4000 BCE.
What's E? I know before Christ, but what's E?
Era.
Era. Okay. I usually just see BC. The E.
Now it's something else. I can't remember what it's called, but it was changed after I was out of high school. So why do all these stories matter? It is because vampires express something universal: the fear of death, decay, the desire for eternal life, and anxiety about the boundaries beyond life and death. So I have a few stories from each cultures. I don't have all that I just covered. I just gathered a few that I thought were very interesting. So let's go back to the first ones. That's the tale of the Lilitu and the 7 storm spirits. This is in Sumeria in 4000 BCE. Like, this was when stories were not even written, they were told.
Word of the mouth.
The mouth of word.
Opposite.
The story starts in ancient Sumerian myth. Before kings ruled men, there were spirits who fed on human life forces, known as the Lilitu. It was a beautiful wind demon that came by night to seduce men in their dreams and then drink their blood. So when they would die in their sleep, they would say that they were taken by the Lilitu.
They were abducted by an alien. Yeah, what the fuck happened?
They also said that she was to travel on the 7 storm spirits who brought disease and fever to villagers. And villagers claimed that the Lilitu would slip through the windows like warm air in the summertime, like a slight breeze. And then it would leave the victims feeling pale, weak, restless. And in one surviving Babylonian ancient tablet, a priest actually wrote this: "She who flies in the dark, whose breast is unsuckled, who drinks the child's milk before the mother awakes, drives her away with fire and salt." So it represented female autonomy, desire, spiritual hunger. And it was basically a story that would terrify women who didn't obey. So it was basically a metaphor for forbidden sexuality, sexual mischievance, and defiance of male control, because as you know, it is not a woman's world, even right now.
Yeah.
We have,
Because they know that we would fucking destroy them.
yeah. But
Kidding.
to be honest, I'm not sexist by any means. I feel like I need men, but I also need women.
We need everybody.
I hate people who are like, we would do so much better without men.
I think there's so many evil men in power that it would be okay for a woman to be in power, to have a thought and a brain. I mean, a conscience and a heart. Because I feel like a lot of people that we don't know about, they're just the worst people, and it's usually just all men. Of course, it's all men. So it wouldn't be bad to have a woman up in that bitch. But, you know, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, in that deep, secretive part of our society, we need that to change.
Yeah.
Who knows what would happen if all that was no more? All that evil child kidnapping crap and all that shit.
Yeah, I know. What would happen if we...
Like, what if none of that even happened? Like a world like that. Imagine.
we would have to eradicate the corruption first.
All the bad genetic seeds. Because it can run in genetics, the way the mental shit is. It's like they want to get rid of, in a sense, it's like they want to get rid of us, the good, like-minded people, so they can keep all the bad, like-minded people. Once they're all gone, then who's there to really stick up for the right thing?
This is just my opinion. Take with this what you will. I think that pedophiles should be sterilized.
Oh, yeah.
I think that pedophiles should be fucking sterilized. You should not be able to have kids if you're willing to hurt the life of another child. Whether you agree with me or not, I'm fucking standing on business on this shit.
Yeah, I get it.
God damn. You should not be able to procreate if you are willing to harm a child. 100%.
But the thing is, the people that get in trouble, that's different. There's people that do it all the time that never will face because they have money.
And yeah, you can't fix them all, but at least the ones that get caught should be fixed. So we have the Ikimu. The Ikimu is the restless dead from Assyria and Babylonia in 200 and 500 BC. The Ikimu was known as the ghost of someone who had died violently. They had died and were never buried, forgotten by the living. The Ikimu would wander in the shadows, invisible, whispering hunger into the ears of the living. They did not drink blood literally. They would drain your vitality. The Babylonians said that it was the spirit of the Ikimu that would attach to you. You would grow thin, tired, your eyes would hollow out, and your life would slowly start slipping away.
Like a leech, sucking you.
The priests performed night rituals at the rivers, like baptisms and chanting, to release these spirits from people. They would say, "Let the offering of the water be given, that the thirsty one may rest." Interesting.
All these weird-ass quotes.
Yeah. I mean, they just spoke so differently back then. They used to speak very poetically. We don't speak poetically anymore. I wish we did.
Like, words don't mean as much now.
Yeah. In South Asia, we have the stories of the possessors of the flesh, the Vitala and the king's riddle. This is a oral Sanskrit tale that dates back to the 11th century, but is far older. This is the first time that it was actually written down, though. The story of King Vikramaditya was tasked to capture the Vitala, the spirit who lived in the corpses and hung upside down from the trees. Each time the king would try to seize it, the Vitala would tell him a riddle or a moral tale. If the king answered, the Vitala would slip away laughing. But if he stayed silent, it would consume him. One night, the Vitala told a story of two monks, one pious and one wicked, and asked, "Which of them will reach heaven first?" The king answered correctly, breaking the spirit's spell. But what terrified the villagers wasn't the riddle, it was the Vitala's laughter. They would say things like, "You humans cannot resist knowing, and that is why you belong to us."
I would belong to you any day, Edward.
Honestly, I don't know.
I'm both.
I really,
But if I could live forever, and I think I obviously don't want to lose my soul and my flesh. I also am in this period where I'm getting older. I just want to stay young. So I'm like, a vampire don't sound so bad right now.
you know, I used to be Team Jacob, but now I am more Team Edward. You know why? And that's because Jake is, like, we were talking about this at work the other day. Jake is a really emotional man. He don't know what he wants. He wants her, then he doesn't want her.
Want a part of her. And that's why when she had her daughter, that part was born within Renesmee. And that's why he imprinted on her instantly. He never imprinted on Bella because it was a part of Bella that he was attached to. So
Interesting.
once Renesmee was born, he imprinted on her and she mattered way more. I mean, obviously he cares for Bella, but Renesmee was like,
Yeah.
it. I read the books, I watched the movie. So that's what he loved so much. He didn't know what it was. I don't think either of them knew what it was.
Yeah.
But he didn't imprint. But it was like, even though he was a wolf, but it was like obvious as soon as Renesmee was born. He imprinted on her baby. That's why she got pissed at him. She was like a newborn vampire. And she like, imprinted on my brain. Because he couldn't help it. Because that part of her was like taken out of her and made into a child. That's what I think. It makes sense.
Oh, she out here. Damn.
What? Well, there's no. Maybe the spirits are in here.
We're talking about movie
No,
show.
maybe it's Jacob.
I used to be Team Jacob. Honestly, I do see how he's much more of an emotional man than Edward. But I don't like emotional men. Some women do. I'm not dogging on emotional men. A man who is in tune with their emotions. It's a good thing. But to be quite honest, my man is the opposite of that. And I feel like a lot of people I've dated are very much, they're very like manly and they have feelings. Fuck that.
Literally got I dated. It was like he wasn't raised to a loving family. No. Like he wasn't raised to a loving family, so his meaning that he wasn't really available. It was more like not like crying and stuff. It was just actually being in a relationship. My dad never said he loved me. I guess it did affect.
That does something to children.
Ultimately, why it didn't work out. I needed someone there for me, emotion. And I can't explain it. It's not like traumatized me. He understands. He sees me in a sense like how I am. I can't even explain it. I don't really know. Like, I don't know what my relationship with him was so long ago. I just wanted more. I felt like we were roommates more than a relationship.
There's sympathy and then there's empathy. Empathy is feeling sorry for somebody and saying like, oh, look, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's sympathy. Empathy is saying, I know exactly how you feel and I'm here for you.
I understand. He talked to me. He just, some men are not good at communicating their emotion. But he said that's because it played his role. I mean, at least he knows. Yeah. And then he also was more introverted. He never really met family. Chopper is involved in, he's a Chopper, a band. You know what I mean? Would have never traveled. Like, that would have never been a thing.
When I dated somebody who was an only child, when I did date, I dated 3 in a row, mind you, men who were only child. And the last one that I dated, the other ones were actually good with kids, but the last one that I dated, he was just like not good with my siblings. If you can't even hang with my family, then like, he'd be like, Gene, your family's really loud and stressful. And I was just like, yeah, I have 5 siblings. My family is a lot. There's just a lot in different ways. Now we have the Pishaka, known as the vampire from India and Nepal. The story, the oral tradition, is the story of the vampire of northern India and Nepal. The story starts in the cremation fields at night, where they would burn the bodies of the sick or people who didn't have families to bury them. When the fires burned low and the wind carried the ash, some people claimed to hear whispers, and those whispers were of the Pishaka, the demon born from unsatisfied desires, the dead. They would possess the recently dead and make them drink blood. The priest said that the light lamps that they would light among the street is basically what allowed them to find people at night. With their eyes hollowed out, they would be able to see if there wasn't any light. Some streets would not light their oil lamps in the street because they would be scared that the Pishaka wouldn't give them opportunity. The spiritual meaning behind it is that the shadow self, the person that we repress, that person is the life energy that lives on after we're dead. If we suppress our inner emotions and our shadow self so much, we will be consumed by that inner darkness and maybe decide to take the life force of others. Almost like how negative people are considered energy vampires. When you have one negative person in a group, whether it's your job or family, and they are consistently negative, it is contagious. If you let it, it will affect you. It'll make you negative towards them, towards the situation, towards other people. You have to recognize the energy first. If you notice somebody like that, I don't associate with people like that in my circle. If I know that you're a negative person, I consider you an energy vampire. You drain the energy out of everyone around you. If you are consistently negative, no one wants to be a fucking around you. You're just a pain to be around, you know? There's nothing wrong with complaining every now and then. It is human to be like, oh my God, my head hurts. Oh my God, I can't believe that my shirt got stained. I was going to wear that this weekend. It's normal to complain about stuff, but when literally everything you talk about is a complaint, you need to take a look at yourself in the mirror. Not everything has to be seen in a negative light. Sometimes something bad happens and you're like, wow, I'm glad that probably saved me from a lot of heartache and trouble later, like a breakup. Like instead of wallowing in the breakup, being like, wow, I'm glad that it ended now. You know, I let that person move in, or I let that person take control over me even more.
Yeah, to get over before it gets worse.
Yeah.
Like we're attached or.
So a few more stories here. We have in Europe, in Serbia, is Petar Blagojevic. This is in 1725 CE. This is a documented oral legend that actually turned into a real event. Peter Blagojevich died, and 9 people in his village perished very mysteriously. Each of them, before dying, said that Petar had come in at night and was strangling them. And when villagers exhumed him, his body was bloated, and he actually had blood coming from his lips. They ended up staking him through the heart, and they said that the corpse screamed. They said that blood gushed from the wound and that villagers burned him. This story actually spread through Austrian newspapers, known as the Case of the Vampire, igniting the first European vampire panic. So this actually isn't superstition, it is grief turned into myth. Plague-stricken villages, people needed an explanation, and something that they could blame it on was the vampire, which was the personification of disease and guilt of being alive when your family members had died. This one I thought was super interesting, the Lamia of Corinth. This is actually in ancient Greece, known as a oral myth that was recorded in 200 CE. A young man named Menippus met a beautiful woman named Lamia, who offered him luxury and love, but a seer warned him that she was not what she actually was. And when the illusion broke, her entire palace that she lived in vanished, and her true form appeared. She was a half serpent, half woman, hollowed eyes, and blood dripping from the mouth. She fed on lovers for centuries in order to continue living as an immortal. So the Lamia is basically the eternal hunger of desire. She is the prototype of every vampiric lover in Western literature. This is the German vampire known as a chewer.
A what?
The chewer of shrouds. The chewer. No, you're like, are you fucking kidding me? In the 17th century, in German villages, when sickness would spread after burial, families would actually exhume the dead if the corpse looked like there were holes above the head. Actually, those holes were made from worms or bugs. But if they saw the holes, that meant that person was probably a vampire that was symbolically feeding on the spiritual aspects of the family. And they would place a stone in its mouth and turn the head backwards. It's disgusting.
It's weird.
So the next stories of these vampires are actually inspired from the bubonic plague, what we were talking about earlier. This is also the vampire panic. There were gravediggers in Poland, Bohemia, and Moravia who reported strange sights when mass graves were reopened. Bodies that sometimes looked fresh, that looked like they weren't even dead. Some of them had blood or foam at the mouth. It made them think that they were just out walking around feeding on people. In Venice, Italy, there were actually stories of the vampire of the Lazaretto Nuovo. In the mid-1500s, during the Italian plague quarantines, the story was an archaeological find. In 2006, after excavating a plague pit in the Venetian island of Lazaretto Nuovo, this was known as a quarantined island, they found many skulls with bricks jammed in their mouth. They started looking into this through oral history, traditions, and they believed that this was actually an exorcism ritual for plagued vampires. So they would literally put bricks in the mouth after you were dead.
It's like being stoned in your mouth.
Being stoned in your mouth.
Restless.
So when it comes to the stories of England and Germany, the chewing corpses Time period was between 1300 and 1600 during the Black Death, mass burials. It was basically saying that when the bodies were bloated, they were engorged with blood from victims. They warned families to cut the tendons and to sever the heads to prevent corpses from becoming alive again. This is actually a quote from a 1679 German tract that was handed out at funerals. The dead who eat through their shrouds call to their kin from the grave. Only when their mouths are filled with stone shall the pestilence cease. This was pure plague era and vampire mythology, like in real life. So, why the plague and vampires are linked is because the blackened skin and blood from the mouth from the bubonic plague is a sign that it was like a vampire interpretation they were feeding. Sudden family deaths in the same family, saying that the death of one person would drain the life of the relatives.
Just like how someone's grandma or grandpa passes, they always see like the other gets like, if they like end up dying sooner because they are so sad and lonely.
But they looked at it like it was something fucking demonic back then.
Instead of sadness.
Yeah. So the Black Death began in 1347. We have just 3 more stories from oral traditions, and then we talk about why we are doing this in the first place. So,
why are we doing this?
For the story of where vampires came from, we're talking about the continents right now. Then we're going to move to how the vampire became popularized in our culture. So, the Asenbosum in Africa region, the Ashanti people, Ghana, this was an oral tradition. When the moon rose full, especially when the moon was red, the hunters of the Ashanti walked in silence. Their elders had warned them, never rest beneath a silk cotton tree. That is where the Asenbosum dreams of the living. One night, a young hunter named Kwaku was ignored by his family, and he felt alone. He rested his head underneath a silk cotton tree. And when he looked up at the moon, he then drifted off to sleep. He awoke when he heard the creak of the branches above. A shadow unfolded from the limbs, a long-armed, red-skinned man with hooks for feet that clinked softly as it descended. The creature smiled, its teeth shining like bones. He said, "You are far from your village, little one. Let me drink what you do not need." Before Kwaku could run, hooked him through the shoulders and dragged him up the tree. At dawn, a community of hunters found him alive, but with hollowed-out eyes and his voice gone. He never hunted or spoke again, and the elders said that the forest had claimed his spirit. So this was one of the stories that they would tell kids. The Asenbosum was basically, do not wander from the village at night. Especially do not sit under a silk cotton tree.
I feel like if you tell a kid not to do something, though, the kid wants to do it more.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic, isn't it? I just feel like kids would have done it. Cause a kid will be a kid.
Curiosity killed the cat.
Kill the kid.
Second to last, we have the America's Wendigo, known from the Algonquin peoples of Canada and the Great Lakes. This is a tradition that they would actually talk about. In the heart of the winter, they say that the wind was a starving beast, and a hunter named Wapek would dream of endless meat, but his family was starving, and the snow had buried every trap, and the hunger burned like fever. One night, desperate, he broke the first law. He took flesh from a man who was frozen on a trail. He thought just this once. When he swallowed that first bite, they said that a voice echoed inside of him, as dry as ice and as ancient as hunger. The spirit had claimed the man. The travelers would speak of a towering figure with frosty white eyes, lips torn off from the face, howling. Whenever it breathed, the air would freeze and the living would wither. The shaman said the Wendigo was not a monster, but a warning. It was a bad omen. If you saw a Wendigo, it meant that something bad was about to happen to you or someone that you loved. Last one, we have the Yaramayahu. This is from Aboriginal Australia, also known as New South Wales. Long before cities, before even the first fire, the red fig tree stood at the edge of a clearing. The elders said that it belonged to the Yaramayahu, a little red man with bulging eyes. He had like suckers on his fingers and toes. He did not hunt the strong and the wise. He only hunted the impatient, the ones who walked at the forest at midday when they should have been resting, and they would pause beneath the fig tree's shade. The Yaramayahu would drop silently from the branches. He did not bite, but drank through the fingers, taking just enough blood from the traveler to make them faint. He would then swallow them whole, their entire body, while they slept. When the sun rose, he would spit the person out, and the person would turn smaller, redder, and stranger. It's almost like they would turn into him. If the victim had returned to that same fig tree too many times, it would become one of their kind, and it would laugh underneath the trees, waiting for the next wanderer. So it's just kind of crazy how each vampire had their own ecosystem. A lot of the vampires in Africa were in the forest. A lot of the vampires known in the oral traditions of the Native Americans would come from the winter, because in the winter it would make people more greedy. In Oceania, it would be the sun and the fig tree. Humanity has always been obsessed with life-drinking beings, from Mesopotamia to India to other European, Asian countries, all the way to Australia. Not that these other cultures had contact with each other. It was the fact that in every culture, the vampire would manifest in some different way. So the word vampire, though, the first earliest known use of the word dates to 1725. In 1819, this marked the birth of the modern vampire. John Polidori was a young physician who was traveling with a poet known as Lord Byron. He wrote a short story titled The Vampire. It was the first English language story to depict a vampire as a handsome, aristocratic nobleman, modeled by Lord Byron himself. The vampire in the book would seduce women and drain their life energy in high society. This is where the vampire officially became romanticized. No longer a bloated corpse, he was an elegant, tortured soul, and spoke very poetically. This is when tropes like the fangs, the hypnotic eyes, the self-loathing, the resurrection from death, this is when all of this was introduced. It was when vampires became an anti-hero archetype, a tragic hero. And this pattern would echo through so many other adaptations later. Just like Bram Stoker's Dracula, written in 1897, basically blended European folklore with Victorian fears and made it very like a gothic romance. So, and in the 21st century, we have the pop culture renaissance of the vampire through Twilight. Vampires became metaphors for identity, sexuality, addiction, and feeling alienated from society. I feel like that's why a lot of people were drawn to it.
Just experience love, their love for each other was painful.
And then the immortality for youth culture, wanting to forever be beautiful, but also being forever cursed by love. Today's vampires are a mirror of the collective psychology. It is a very popular Halloween costume, TikTok aesthetic. Vampires have inspired Gothic fashion for probably up to 3 centuries now. So the first written use of the word vampire stems from 1725. Then the vampire becomes this aristocratic, mysterious, sexual thing in the 1800s. There was no single person who coined the term. It actually stems from the word upir, which is the Slavic word for bloodsucker. And so vampire, vampire.
Okay, why do you knew that? Out of all the ones, that's why I knew vampire.
Yeah.
They probably say that crap. It's one of my favorite ones. Underworld.
Yeah.
Because you got lichens.
Yeah.
Werewolves, they're lichens. Which
Yeah.
is like the real term.
That's cool. I remember that. I love learning about mythology. This is so cool. So, in short, the word vampire is 300 years old. The idea of a vampire is as old as human fear itself. Romanticizing the vampire comes from around the 1800s. I wanted to cover all of the oral traditions. I just love it. So, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much for supporting us. We love you guys. The night the vampire was born in Lake Geneva in 1816, the sky was wrong that year, and there was an eruption from Mount Tambora that had thrown ashes into the heavens, blotting out the sun across Europe. In the summer of 1816, there was a lot of writings that said that it feels like the end of the world, because after this eruption from Mount Tambora, there were many failed crops, the sky was like a glowing orange, and thunder would roar from the heavens all day, but it was just all of this smoke going up into the sky, causing
it to look like that.
So on the shores of Lake Geneva, 5 exiles from English high society took shelter inside of a villa. They were young, brilliant, and scandalous. We have Lord Byron, an infamous poet, exiled for his debts and possible incest. We have John Polidori. He was a young physician who was very ambitious and insecure. We have Percy Bysshe Shelley, an idealist poet from the Revolution. We have Mary Godwin, also Mary. This is Mary Shelley. She was just 18, fiercely intelligent, destined to write Frankenstein. And then we have Claire Clairmont, Mary's stepsister and Lord Byron's lover, caught between genius and chaos. The group was trapped indoors by relentless storms. Boredom and lightning, mingled with a lot of wine, made Lord Byron propose a game. Let's each write a ghost story. Mary Shelley's dream that night would inspire her to write Frankenstein, the story of a man who creates life and becomes a monster. But Byron's imagination turned much darker. He began an unfinished story about a mysterious traveler, pale, noble, and magnetic, who carried a curse with him, the curse of death. A young man named Aubrey befriends a strange aristocrat named Lord Ruthven, and they would be doing this traveling across Greece. Ruthven would move through high society like a shadow, enchanting women and then leaving them pale and lifeless. This is where the story of the vampire really came from. Like this night of them making up all of these stories, which is so insane to me. So basically, he never finished his story, Lord Byron. He did not finish it. And his doctor, John Polidori, could not stop thinking about this story. It inspired him to create the vampire. John Polidori, inspired by what Lord Byron had to say that night, created his short story known as The Vampire in 1819. He did use part of Lord Byron's abandoned idea, but Byron took it personally. He said that you took the blueprint from my story. All stories are inspired from other stories. I don't know. John Polidori's vampire, he did take the name of Lord Byron's vampire, Lord Ruthven. He was known as a very good-looking man who would seduce noble women during their life and then vanish before dawn. If that sounds similar, it's because it should, because this is the first modern vampire. This is actually, Lord Ruthven is the ancestor to Dracula, Lestat, Edward Cullen, and every black velvet costume to come after. That's where the cape and the, the whole thing.
Longer. But yeah, he lived in that era though at one point. Edward did.
Well, unfortunately, the irony of immortality caught up to John Pilidori. At this time, you couldn't be two things at once. You had to pick one thing. You couldn't be multi-talented. So everyone wanted him to be a doctor because he was a good doctor. But he said, I wanted to be a literary poet. He would never live to see how famous his creation became because he died by suicide at the age of 25, consumed by depression and overshadowed by Lord Byron. When he published his story, Lord Byron intersected and said, this man stole this story from me. So they changed the name of the author to Lord Byron without consulting John Pilidori. So when he saw that it was published and he was like, oh, I'm going to be famous, it wasn't in his name.
That's fucked up.
So he was like, I don't want to continue living if my work isn't going to be attributed to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's a little far-fetched, but if he was already going through it, I guess that makes sense, you know?
So, in one single stormy night, two monsters and immortal archetypes were born. That is, the Frankenstein monster and the vampire. John Pilidori is basically the inventor of the modern vampire, the elegant, the tragic, the seductive, not born from peasantry or superstition or the plague, but from poets trapped in a storm playing with stories of death. So this begs the question now. John, how did he die? Did he die from a gothic tragedy? Kind of. It is one of the most haunting and poetic stories in history. He died at the age of 25, misunderstood and alone, yet never knowing that his story would inspire countless Hollywood films, books, the fashion industry, and the way we view goth girls forever. So he dreamed of immortality only to make a story that literally is immortal. He was a man of science, but he was also a man of words. Unfortunately, during this culture, you could not be both. You had to pick one. And that internal war, just like the internal war of the vampire itself, fighting between love and lust, wanting to kill, and life and death, it continues.
There's a lot to think about.
So, the story basically symbolizes wanting to be recognized for your ambition. We also have the despair by suicide, which reflects the vampire's endless hunger and loneliness. And then the immortality of the story's eternal life in culture. He wanted to heal bodies, but he craved to be remembered. Instead, he followed the most dangerous man in Europe into a thunderstorm, and then came back with the world's first vampire and a curse. Byron lived on forever because his legend never died, because everybody thought that he wrote this. But John Pilidori died at 25, and in a strange, twisted way, they both got what they wanted, which was immortality. John Pilidori did not live long enough to see his creation. He did get what he wanted most, though. He did have his art immortalized. Although he's not remembered for his art, we can remember him. So the vampire, the symbol of beauty, hunger, loneliness, also became his eternal reflection. So maybe that's what art does. It distracts us from our pain, our envy, our obsessions, and we feed on the art that we create until it becomes something timeless. So,
Yeah.
John Pilidori, he gave us the first modern vampire. The world has never looked back. That is a wrap on this week's Chadderbox. Tune in next week for more. Kyla has a juicy topic next week. It is going to be a surprise.
It is.
Yes, it is going to be a surprise.
Why?
I don't know what the topic is, bitch. So it might be haunting, it might not. It might just be cultural or
A
interesting
story
or
about
philosophical.
somebody. It's based off a movie.
Interesting.
That is not scary.
It's okay. We have been on the scary shit for a while now, so it's probably going to be good to have a break.
Do you want to know?
Give him a little tidbit.
Okay, it's about a story called. Well, do we want to tell them now?
Just give him a little sneak peek, a little preview, like a little teaser.
It just came out in theaters recently.
Sinister Sisters.
Girl, I know it was scary.
Oh, I forgot.
But it was in the past like month or two. It's not like I don't think it's in theaters anymore, but it just recently came out. Like it's a new movie. And it happened though in like the early 90s. So I'm excited.
Well, comment what you think it is in the meantime.
Yeah.
But also in the meantime, do not
All
forget.
over the news.
Do not forget. Tell your therapist or don't, because it's probably too late anyways. Tell your friends.
Tell your cousins that you don't talk to every day.
Tell your exes that you were right. Tell your group chat we said hi. Tell your enemies and tell your mom we said sorry.
Tell your stepmom.
And your stepdad. It's Chadderbox, baby. Love you guys.
Peace, bitch.